Sometimes, the remnants of ancient civilizations come to us not as delicate pottery fragments or the sun-bleached bones of long-forgotten ancestors, but as something far more enigmatic, something that defies logic, defies explanation, and seems to whisper secrets from a world we no longer understand. These relics do not merely rest in museum cases. They linger in the soil, beneath the canopy of ancient forests, daring us to decipher their purpose, their meaning, their origin. Deep within the emerald depths of Costa Rica's lush rainforests, scattered along the winding riverbanks and hidden beneath layers of fertile earth, lie dozens of immense stone spheres, silent sentinels from a distant past. These are not the crude, irregular boulders one might expect from natural erosion or geological coincidence. Rather, they are meticulously shaped, uncannily symmetrical, and astonishingly precise. Each one, a marvel of craftsmanship, appears to have been carved with mathematical intent and artistic foresight. Some of these spheres weigh more than 15 tons, and yet to this day, no definitive answers exist as to who created them, how they were transported across unforgiving terrain, or for what enigmatic purpose they were placed. Known collectively as the stone spheres of Costa Rica, these mysterious artifacts have captured the imagination of archaeologists, researchers, and storytellers alike for nearly a century. Their story begins in the early 1930s, during an era when the United Fruit Company was carving through the dense jungles of the Dikis Delta in search of fertile ground for banana plantations. As machines roared and trees fell, workers stumbled upon a most curious sight: enormous stone orbs, some perfectly round, others softened by time, all lying in silence among the roots and soil. The initial discovery was met with confusion and curiosity. To the laborers clearing the land, the spheres were anomalies without context. Some believed them to be the work of nature, the product of erosion or ancient floods. Others, driven by tales of treasure and myth, imagined they were containers of gold or sacred offerings sealed by time. In their haste and excitement, a few of the stones were destroyed with dynamite, reduced to rubble in hopes of discovering riches. But within the shattered remains, they found only more stone, no treasure, no hidden chambers, just a dense and resolute silence. As word of these peculiar objects spread, archaeologists descended upon the region with tools and theories in hand. What they found was extraordinary. The spheres varied greatly in size, from small stones that could be cradled in one's hand to massive orbs spanning over 8 feet in diameter. Yet despite this range, many of them shared an uncanny degree of spherical perfection, a geometric elegance that is rare even by today's standards. What made this discovery all the more astonishing was the composition of the spheres themselves. Granodiorite, a volcanic rock known for its extreme hardness. This material was not found locally, meaning that whoever made these orbs had to quarry the stone from distant regions, shape it with unparalleled precision, and transport it, all without the aid of modern machinery. The question of who created the spheres continues to perplex scholars. The prevailing theory attributes their origin to the Dikis culture, an indigenous society that thrived in the region between 700 and 1530 AD. The Dikis were known for their elaborate gold work, sophisticated ceramics, and stone sculptures. However, nowhere else in their material culture do we find evidence of anything as massive, as mathematically refined, or as mysterious as these spheres. They left behind no writing, no inscriptions, and no records to explain their purpose. And when European explorers eventually reached Costa Rica, the Dikis had already vanished into the annals of forgotten history. Speculation about the sphere's intended use runs the gamut from the scholarly to the supernatural. Some suggest they were status symbols, placed in front of the dwellings of chiefs or high-ranking individuals to denote power and influence. Others argue they may have served as astronomical tools, aligned with the stars or the path of the sun to mark significant dates in the calendar. A number of spheres were found in arrangements that hint at celestial alignments, though the original placements of many have been lost, making conclusive interpretation difficult. More spiritual interpretations posit that the spheres held ritual significance, that they were symbols of life, death, or rebirth, or representations of the universe itself. Indigenous legends speak of the spheres as thunderstones hurled by divine beings to defend the land. Still other, more fringe theories suggest the spheres were energy conduits, placed along ley lines, tapping into a hidden network of earth energies understood by ancient peoples and lost to modern minds. One of the more compelling hypotheses posits that the spheres may have served as navigational markers, forming part of an ancient system to chart trade routes, sacred places, or territorial boundaries. This idea could explain why some spheres were discovered in clusters, while others stood in isolation. Yet even this theory, while tantalizing, raises further questions. Who could have designed such a system? And why would they choose such an extraordinarily difficult method of representation? The absence of tools or quarry sites near the spheres has only deepened the mystery. Granodiorite is unforgiving, resisting all but the most deliberate and skilled efforts to shape it. Even with today's tools, crafting a perfect sphere from this stone would be a time-consuming, painstaking endeavor. Some researchers suggest the ancient artisans used a technique involving fire to heat the rock, followed by dousing it with cold water to fracture the surface before painstakingly grinding it down with other stones. But even this method fails to fully account for the near-perfect symmetry observed in many of the spheres. Equally perplexing is the question of transport. How were these massive orbs moved over miles of dense jungle and uneven terrain without the benefit of wheels, draft animals, or modern transport? Were they rolled across wooden logs, hauled on rafts or sleds? Or was there a technique, now forgotten, that allowed ancient engineers to manipulate heavy objects with surprising efficiency? Each question seems to give rise to more questions, each mystery unfolding into another. In the absence of definitive answers, more speculative theories have emerged. Some claim that the spheres were created with the help of extraterrestrial technology, pointing to their precision and the lack of explanatory evidence as proof of a non-human origin. Others believe they are remnants of an even older, now lost civilization, one that predates the Dikees and left behind no trace save these solemn stones. While such ideas remain outside the boundaries of mainstream archaeology, they underscore a deeper truth, that we still know very little about the full breadth of human history. Compounding the difficulty of study is the fact that many of the spheres have been removed from their original locations. Some were taken to museums, others sold to private collectors, and many simply moved by farmers clearing their land. The displacement of these stones has made it nearly impossible to reconstruct their original context, their alignments, or their intended function. What might have once been a coherent message from the past is now a scattered puzzle, its pieces missing, its meaning elusive. Today, a small number of these spheres remain in situ and are protected as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, but countless others have been damaged, destroyed, or forgotten. Despite decades of careful research, the stone spheres of Costa Rica remain one of archaeology's most enduring enigmas. Were they political symbols, spiritual icons, celestial guides, or something altogether different? We may never know. And yet, even in their silence, the spheres continue to speak. They speak of a people whose ingenuity and artistry we have only begun to comprehend. They remind us that human history is filled with lost chapters, stories still buried beneath jungle vines and layers of time. And they challenge us to keep looking, to keep asking, to never be entirely satisfied with the answers we have. Costa Rica's mysterious stone spheres are not the only relics that hint at forgotten greatness. Across the world, ruins and legends whisper of civilizations lost to the sea, to the earth, to time itself. In the southeastern corner of India, along a rugged coastline where waves crash against ancient rocks, a tale has persisted for centuries, a legend of such wonder and beauty that even the gods, it is said, could not resist. Jealous of its splendor, they cast the entire city into the ocean, leaving behind only fragments. It is a story that blends myth and memory, faith and fact. And in the town of Mahabalipuram, the legend of the 7 pagodas may yet reveal truths long hidden beneath the sea. There is a book resting quietly in the Hungarian Academy of Sciences that has never been read, not because it's protected by law or locked in a vault, but because no one on earth has been able to understand a single word written inside it. Its pages are filled with elegant, flowing script, line after line of symbols that match no known alphabet. It is a language that does not exist, a language that perhaps never existed. And yet, someone wrote it. Someone long ago took the time to create 448 pages of text, each meticulously inscribed with over 200 unique characters, accompanied by strange illustrations, battles, saints, kings, and temples. The book has come to be known as the Rohank Codex, and for over 2 centuries, it has remained one of history's most perplexing and impenetrable mysteries. The story of the Codex, as far as anyone knows, begins in Hungary in the early 1800s, when a nobleman named Gustav Batthyány donated the manuscript to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Before that, it had been part of his family's private collection. But how it came into their hands, or who created it, remains entirely unknown. The book looks, at first glance, like a religious manuscript from the medieval period, perhaps a lost gospel or a forgotten chronicle. The illustrations certainly hint at that. Crosses and robed figures, what appear to be saints or warriors, or even angels. But then, other images break the pattern. There are symbols that seem Islamic, others that resemble Hindu motifs. The combination is so strange, so unexpected, that scholars have never been able to agree on what tradition, if any, the book might belong to. Is it Christian, Islamic, a fusion of both, or something else entirely? Of course, the text itself offers no answers, because no one can read it. Despite decades of study by linguists, historians, cryptographers, and even military codebreakers, no one has been able to decipher the script. In the 19th century, Hungarian scholars attempted to match it with known languages of the region: Hungarian, Latin, Romanian, even Sanskrit. Nothing matched. In the 20th century, experts turned to modern techniques, like frequency analysis, searching for recurring patterns or structures that might reveal grammar or syntax. Still, no breakthrough came. The writing remains frustratingly resistant to all efforts, behaving neither like a real language nor like a simple cipher. Some symbols repeat often. Certain combinations show up again and again, but the overall structure is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's as if the book is written in a completely lost language, or, as some have proposed, in complete nonsense. And that raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if the Rohank Codex is a hoax? Could it be that some trickster, perhaps even Gustav Batthyány himself, commissioned or created the manuscript as a kind of prank? After all, the 19th century was a time of national romanticism in Europe, a period when noble families and scholars alike were obsessed with ancient origins, lost traditions, and mysterious relics. What better way to create a sense of historical grandeur than by presenting an ancient book that no one could decipher. But if it was a hoax, then it was a remarkably elaborate one. Who would go to the trouble of inventing over 200 unique symbols, far more than any known language uses, and carefully arranging them across nearly 450 pages without ever repeating a consistent pattern? Who would spend hours drawing detailed religious and military scenes just to decorate a fake? And most importantly, why has no one, even today, with all our technology and expertise, been able to prove once and for all that it is a hoax? Other theories are more generous. Some scholars believe the codex may have been written in a real language, just one that is now extinct. It's possible that the manuscript was created by a small, isolated community with their own dialect, their own writing system, one that disappeared before it could be recorded or remembered. Others believe it may belong to a forgotten religious sect, a group that blended Christian, Islamic, and Eastern beliefs into a hybrid faith, capturing their philosophy in a text meant only for the initiated. If so, the codex might represent a lost spiritual tradition, one that was deliberately obscured or hidden away to protect it from persecution or erasure. And yet, for all the speculation, the Rohank Codex remains silent. No one knows what it says. No one knows who wrote it. No one even knows what purpose it was meant to serve. It just exists, a puzzle in plain sight. A book no one can read, filled with symbols that don't belong to any known world. And perhaps that's what makes it so haunting. In an age when we believe we can know everything, when satellites map every inch of the earth and AI can translate forgotten tongues, the Codex reminds us that there are still some doors we cannot open. Some knowledge remains beyond reach, whether it's a relic of a forgotten people, the scripture of a secret sect, or simply a masterful joke lost to time. The Rohank Codex continues to whisper its secrets from the shadows, waiting, watching, silent, until someone finally listens closely enough to understand. Beneath the quiet hills of southeastern Turkey lies a secret buried for over 12,000 years, older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, so ancient it predates even the idea of civilization. And yet, it was built with such precision, such purpose, that it challenges everything we thought we knew about our past. Who built this place, and why? Did they bury it? This is Göbekli Tepe. Hidden beneath layers of earth, it remained untouched for thousands of years, until a chance discovery in the 1960s hinted that something was buried beneath the ground. But it wasn't until the 1990s, when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating the site, that the true scale of Göbekli Tepe was revealed. What he found shocked the world. Massive circular stone enclosures with towering limestone pillars, each one up to 20 feet tall and weighing 20 tons. Some were decorated with detailed carvings of animals, symbols, and humanoid shapes. They weren't just randomly placed. They were arranged with intention, with meaning. And yet, according to everything we knew, people living 12,000 years ago were simple hunter-gatherers, no farming, no cities, no stone tools, advanced enough to create this. So how did they do it? There are no homes here, no cooking pots, no signs of permanent living. Göbekli Tepe wasn't a village. It wasn't a city. It seems to have been something different, something sacred. Some believe it was a place of worship, a spiritual center where early humans gathered to perform rituals, honor the stars, or speak to their ancestors. The carvings suggest deeper meanings: predators, birds, snakes, all possibly symbolizing myths, warnings, or sacred knowledge. Could it have been a temple, an ancient observatory? Was this a place where stories were told, the heavens watched, and mysteries celebrated. One theory suggests that the structures are aligned with constellations, hinting at an understanding of the cosmos far more advanced than we believed possible at the time. Another idea is that these carvings told stories passed down from generation to generation, stories carved in stone before humans even knew how to write. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how it was built, but why it was buried. At some point, long after Göbekli Tepe was constructed, people came back and covered it with dirt. Not by accident, it was deliberate. The pillars were gently filled in, preserved as if someone wanted it hidden or saved for another time. Was it considered too sacred? Was it abandoned after some disaster? Or did someone try to erase it from history? Whatever the reason, the act of burying it may have been what kept it so well preserved for us to discover today. Archaeologists today are cautious. Most believe Göbekli Tepe was built by highly organized hunter-gatherers, a society just beginning to experiment with agriculture and community. Some even believe that the effort to build such a site, to feed the workers, to organize the labor, may have helped create the very idea of civilization. In other words, it wasn't farming that led to religion. It may have been religion that led to farming. But still, questions remain. How did people with no known tools, no wheels, and no writing move, carve, and erect such massive stones with perfect alignment? Some researchers take it further. They suggest Göbekli Tepe might be the last trace of a forgotten civilization, a society lost to time, perhaps wiped out during a global catastrophe, like the end of the last ice age. One controversial theory, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, suggests that a comet hit Earth around 12,800 years ago. This event could have caused rapid climate shifts, flooding, and the collapse of unknown cultures. If that's true, Göbekli Tepe may be one of the only surviving monuments from a lost world, a whisper from a time before history began. And if one such site exists, could there be more still buried beneath our feet? What makes Göbekli Tepe so powerful is not just its age, it's what it says about us, about the power of belief, memory, and mystery. Even before cities, before farming, humans were storytellers. They gathered under stars, carved their fears and dreams into stone, and built monuments that would outlast their own lifetimes. Maybe those carvings were meant for the future. Maybe, in some strange way, they were meant for us. Göbekli Tepe forces us to rethink the story of civilization. If people 12,000 years ago could create something so complex, so meaningful, what else were they capable of? And how much have we lost to time? Despite decades of excavation, the site still holds more questions than answers. New structures are still being uncovered, and beneath every stone, a deeper mystery waits. Was this the birthplace of human spirituality, the legacy of a forgotten people, or something else entirely? We may never know the full story of Göbekli Tepe, but one thing is certain: the past still has secrets, and sometimes those secrets are carved in stone. If this story made you wonder, what else might be hidden beneath our history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. There are books that offer knowledge, books that preserve history, and then there are books that seem to defy explanation. Books whose very existence stirs something deep within us. Wonder, unease, and a lingering sense that we may never fully understand where they came from or why they were made. Tonight, we open one such book. It is the largest medieval manuscript ever discovered, a creation so massive, so meticulous, and so mysterious that for centuries, people have whispered the same unsettling question: Could it truly have been written by human hands alone? This is the story of the Codex Gigas, more famously known as the Devil's Bible. Tucked away in the secure vaults of the National Library of Sweden is a manuscript unlike anything else from the ancient world. When closed, it stands nearly 3 feet tall and weighs more than 165 pounds. Its pages are made from the skins of over 160 animals, most believe calf or donkey, painstakingly prepared, smoothed, and inscribed. Open it, and the book stretches nearly a yard across. The spine creaks like a cathedral door, revealing a world written entirely in Latin, with an eerie uniformity that suggests something unnatural. Bound in thick wooden boards and wrapped in ancient leather, it gives the impression not merely of a book, but of a tomb, heavy with centuries of silence. And yet, despite its sacred passages and biblical grandeur, it is not the holy verses that have captured the world's imagination. It is the image and the legend that lies at the heart of it. According to medieval lore passed down through the centuries, the Codex Gigas was not simply written, it was forged under the most desperate and dreadful of circumstances. The story begins within the cold stone walls of a Benedictine monastery in Bohemia, now part of the modern-day Czech Republic. There, a monk is said to have committed a grievous sin, one so severe, so damning, that he was sentenced to a most horrifying punishment, to be sealed alive within the monastery walls, entombed in complete darkness, left to die in solitude. But the monk, it is said, begged for mercy. In exchange for his life, he offered to create a manuscript unlike any the world had ever seen, a book that would glorify God, preserve all human knowledge, and serve as an eternal monument of devotion. And he would do it in one night. The abbot, skeptical but intrigued, granted his plea, believing the task to be impossible. But as the hours passed, the monk realized what he had promised could never be achieved by mortal effort. And so, in the silence of his cell, with time slipping away and death drawing near, he made one final desperate prayer. But this time, he did not pray to God. The legend says the devil answered. In exchange for the monk's soul, the book would be completed, perfectly and in time. By morning, the manuscript was finished. Not a single mistake, not a single blot of hesitation. Every word flowed with an inhuman precision, and in gratitude, or perhaps in tribute, the monk dedicated an entire page to his infernal benefactor, a full-body portrait of the devil, rendered in vivid, unsettling detail, horned, fanged, crouched, and staring directly into the reader's soul. It is this portrait, strange, menacing, and entirely out of place in a religious manuscript, that earned the book its infamous name. But beyond the legend, what do we truly know? Modern analysis has revealed something deeply perplexing. The entirety of the Codex Gigas, every chapter, every word, every carefully drawn illustration, appears to have been created by a single scribe. This is not merely conjecture. Handwriting experts have scrutinized the manuscript at microscopic levels. They have confirmed that the style, spacing, ink density, and pressure remain perfectly consistent throughout all 310 pages. And here lies the mystery. To produce such a manuscript by hand, using the tools available in the 13th century, should have taken between 25 and 30 years. That's assuming the scribe wrote every day, for hours, without illness or interruption. Yet there are no signs of aging in the script, no fading strength, no changes in ink, no mistakes corrected over time. The writing feels uninterrupted, as if time itself paused to allow the work to be completed. How could a single man, confined within a medieval monastery, produce something so vast, and so flawless. Unless, of course, he didn't work alone. Within the Codex Gigas lies the complete Latin Bible. But the book does not stop there. Interwoven between Holy Scripture are medical treatises, historical records, and exorcism rituals. There are texts on astrology, magical incantations, and even references to demonology. This blending of the sacred and the profane is deeply unsettling in an age when even minor heresies could lead to execution. Why would a monk, especially one pleading for redemption, include such dark material? Was it meant to be a record of all knowledge, both divine and forbidden? Or was the monk recording something he had seen or done? And what of the devil's portrait? Was it a warning to future readers, a mark of fear and regret? Or was it a signature, the final flourish of a deal fulfilled? Throughout its long and turbulent history, the Devil's Bible has been stolen, lost, and nearly destroyed. In the late 1600s, it was taken as war booty by the Swedish army and brought to Stockholm, where it entered the Royal Library. And in 1697, when a catastrophic fire engulfed the building, something strange happened. Eyewitnesses reported seeing the massive book being hurled from a window, a desperate act to save it from the flames. The book landed heavily on the cobblestones below, almost entirely unharmed. The rest of the library was not so lucky. To some, it was a stroke of fortune. To others, a sign that the book was protected. Or perhaps that it protected itself. Today, the Codex Gigas rests in silence once more, encased in glass, studied by scholars, scanned by machines. And yet, the heart of the mystery remains untouched. Who truly wrote it? Why was it created? And why does its most haunting image, the devil himself, sit at the very center of a book supposedly made to glorify God? Perhaps the monk was simply a man of rare talent and unfathomable endurance, a solitary genius driven by guilt, obsession, or divine purpose. Or perhaps the legend is true. Perhaps one night, in the darkest hours before dawn, a man made a deal, and the pages of the Codex Gigas are the price he paid. In the end, the Devil's Bible is not just a book. It is a question, bound in leather, inked in blood, and whispered across the centuries. And sometimes, the most terrifying mysteries are not the ones that lie buried in the past, but the ones we can still hold in our hands. It was the year 1957, in the quiet and unassuming town of Brooklyn, Maine, a place where time itself seemed to move just a little more slowly, where the waves met the shore with the same rhythm they had for centuries. In this tranquil setting, a man named Guy Melgren, an amateur archaeologist driven more by passion than by profession, embarked on an excavation at a site known as Goddard, a place long recognized for its wealth of Native American artifacts. As he sifted through layers of earth that had remained undisturbed for untold generations, Melgren's hands came upon an object unlike anything else found at the site. Among the stone tools, shards of pottery, and remnants of ancient tribal life, there lay a small circular piece of metal, worn smooth by time and unassuming in appearance. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, just another curious find, weathered by centuries underground. But when examined more closely by scholars and experts, it revealed a truth so startling that it would echo far beyond the quiet woods of Maine. What Melgren had discovered, it turned out, was not a colonial coin, nor a Native American artifact, nor anything else that might have belonged in that location, in that era. It was identified with remarkable certainty as a Norse silver penny, a coin minted during the reign of King Olaf Kyrres of Norway, who ruled from 1067 to to 1093 AD. In other words, this was a Viking coin, forged in medieval Scandinavia and buried beneath the soil of the American Northeast. Such a find seemed at first impossible, a contradiction to the carefully drawn maps of historical certainty. Yet the coin was real, and it was there. And with its presence, it brought forth a question that would haunt historians for decades. Had the Vikings ventured farther into North America than we have ever known? According to the accepted narrative, the Norse explorer Leif Erikson reached the shores of present-day Newfoundland around the year 1000 AD, establishing a brief settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows. That site remains the only physical evidence of Viking presence in the New World. Beyond that, the story ends. Or at least, it was supposed to, but Brooklyn, Maine lies hundreds of miles farther south, beyond the known reach of those early Norse voyagers. And yet, if this coin is what it appears to be, authentic and untouched by modern contamination, it may suggest something extraordinary. That Viking explorers traveled farther, stayed longer, or traded more widely than we have ever imagined. Could it be that along the rugged coast of New England, hidden beneath the forests and forgotten by time, there once stood a Viking outpost, a secret settlement, now swallowed by the centuries? Or perhaps more subtly, there were moments of contact, brief exchanges between Norse seafarers and the indigenous peoples of North America, passing goods, stories, and memories that would soon vanish into silence. Of course, not all scholars embrace the idea of direct Norse presence in Maine. There is another theory, one that follows a longer and more winding road. The Goddard site was known to be a center of native trade, part of an intricate network that spanned hundreds, perhaps thousands of miles. In this view, the coin may have passed from tribe to tribe, a mysterious object from a faraway world, traded, treasured, and transported over generations. It is entirely possible that the Vikings never stepped foot on Maine's soil, and that their coin, like a drifting relic, simply traveled farther than its makers ever did. But even if this theory holds truth, it still speaks volumes about the complexity of pre-Columbian America, a land of far-reaching trade, ancient connectivity, and global echoes that stretch beyond what history has told us. Naturally, there are voices of doubt, voices that question the circumstances under which the coin was discovered and the motivations of the man who found it. Some critics point out that Guy Melgren was an avid coin collector and speculate that the artifact may have found its way into the soil through less than ancient means, perhaps accidentally or deliberately. They note the absence of other Norse artifacts at the site. No weapons, no tools, no ruins, just the lone coin, found perforated, possibly repurposed as a pendant or ornament by a later culture. The possibility of contamination cannot be ignored, but neither can the tests nor the consensus of multiple experts who confirm that the coin is genuinely Norse and undeniably ancient. And so we are left with a puzzle, one that refuses to offer easy answers and defies the neat conclusions of textbook history. What makes the mystery of the Maine penny even more compelling is that it is not alone. Across the world, other discoveries have surfaced that seem to exist out of time, unsettling and unexplained. Roman coins have been found in Texas and Venezuela. Japanese coins have surfaced on the shores of East Africa. Fragments of old worlds scattered in places they seemingly should not be, whispering of ancient journeys long forgotten. Taken individually, such anomalies can be dismissed, but taken together, they form a pattern, a quiet, persistent suggestion that the boundaries of history may be far more porous than we once believed. The Maine penny is not just a coin. It is a symbol, a mirror held up to our understanding of the past. It challenges us to consider what else we may have overlooked and what other truths lie just beneath the surface of our known world. It is a reminder that history is not a closed book, but a living narrative, one still being written with each new discovery, each unanswered question, and each whisper from the soil beneath our feet. Somewhere in the forgotten hills of China, tucked beneath layers of earth, roots, and silence, lies something that might just change the way we see history. It's not written about in textbooks. It doesn't appear in tourist brochures. But those who have seen it say it's real. They say it's bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, stranger than Stonehenge, and far more hidden than any of them. They call it the White Pyramid of China, a monument so massive, so mysterious, that for decades it has remained buried in secrecy. Quite literally. The story begins in Shanxi province, a quiet region in central China, where rolling hills stretch into the mist, and time seems to move just a little slower. On the surface, nothing here seems extraordinary. There are no signs, no crowds, no gift shops, just nature, quiet, undisturbed. But beneath that stillness lies a series of structures that don't quite fit with the landscape. Giant pyramidal mounds, geometric in shape, unnaturally uniform. You wouldn't notice them at first glance. You might think they're just hills. But once you really look, you start to realize something doesn't feel natural. Unlike the towering pyramids of Egypt that rise boldly against the desert sky, these are hidden on purpose. Trees have been planted over them. Soil has been carefully shaped to blend them into the land. And for the most part, officials insist they're just part of the terrain. But satellite images tell a different story. Symmetrical shapes, sharp edges, repeating patterns, and one in particular stands out among the rest: the White Pyramid. Its story emerged near the end of World War II, in 1945, when an American pilot named James Gaussman was flying a reconnaissance mission over China. According to his account, as his plane soared above the region, something below caught his eye. Something shining. It was a colossal, blindingly white structure rising from the ground, unlike anything he'd ever seen. He described it as having smooth, perfectly symmetrical sides, almost glowing in the sunlight. It didn't look like a mountain or a building, or anything man-made that he knew of. And yet, there it was, real, towering, silent. He estimated it to be at least 1,000 feet tall, which, if true, would make it the largest pyramid ever built by human hands. Gaussman reported his sighting. He even sketched the structure. But somehow that report was buried, classified, forgotten. Then, 2 years later, in 1947, another American pilot, Colonel Morris Shahan, reported seeing the same thing. He too described a giant white pyramid with impossibly smooth sides. This time, the story made it into the New York Times. And yet, despite 2 credible eyewitnesses, no photos were released. No expedition was launched. And just like that, the White Pyramid faded from public view, but not from memory, because the locals never forgot. In the villages near those quiet hills, stories have passed from one generation to the next. Stories of strange lights hovering at night, of compasses spinning wildly, of places where birds won't land and animals refuse to graze. The elders speak of sacred ground, warning not to dig, not to disturb. The Sky Kings are sleeping, some say. Leave them be. And then there's the science. Archaeologists have long known that Shanxi province is home to dozens, perhaps hundreds, of ancient pyramidal tombs, many dating back more than 2,000 years to the Western Han Dynasty. These were believed to be burial mounds for emperors, much like the pharaohs of Egypt. Some contain vast treasures. Others remain completely untouched. The most famous, of course, is the tomb of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the ruler buried near the Terracotta Army. And even that tomb remains sealed, not because it's been looted or forgotten, but because scientists have detected high levels of toxic mercury within. Mercury, liquid metal, poison, a trap maybe, or a warning. Most of China's ancient pyramids have never been excavated, and access to these sites, especially for foreign researchers, is extremely limited. Officially, it's about preservation. The government says they want to protect these fragile sites from damage, but some wonder, is there something else they're trying to protect? Or perhaps hide? Because what if the White Pyramid isn't just another tomb? What if it holds something older, something more advanced than any of us are prepared to understand? Some theorists have suggested that the pyramid's bright surface and perfect geometry hint at an ancient technology we've forgotten. Others whisper that it may not have been built by humans at all. Far-fetched? Maybe. But then again, what else explains the silence, the lack of photos, the missing reports? Satellite images do show pyramid-like shapes in the region. Large ones, covered in trees, hidden in plain sight. And in villages nearby, the stories continue. Lights in the sky, sudden illnesses, people who got too close and never came back. Of course, none of this is proven. It could all be folklore. But then again, isn't that where all great truths begin? As stories? There are scholars who believe that inside these pyramids may lie scrolls, artifacts, even lost languages. Things that could rewrite what we know about early human civilization. China, after all, has lost much of its ancient written history due to centuries of war, destruction, and regime change. If something survived, something sealed within a hidden tomb, it might be the only surviving record of a world we've never seen. And still, no one is allowed to look. The White Pyramid, if it exists, remains one of archaeology's greatest unknowns. It could be the tomb of a forgotten emperor, or a relic from a time before recorded history. It could be something entirely explainable, or something that challenges everything we believe about the past. Maybe it's just a story, a misidentified hill, a trick of light and memory. Or maybe, just maybe, it's still out there, quiet, undisturbed, waiting for the right eyes to find it, waiting for the right moment to be remembered. Until then, it remains what it has always been, a mystery, buried beneath time, silence, and the trees. In a quiet corner of the Middle East, hidden among dusty hills and ancient ruins, lies one of the greatest mysteries on Earth. A place so old, so massive, that even the most advanced minds of today struggle to explain it. This is Baalbek, and the stones here, they don't make sense. Located in modern-day Lebanon, Baalbek is home to the ruins of an enormous Roman temple complex. To the casual visitor, it might look like just another set of ancient ruins. But beneath the surface lies something far stranger. Scattered across the site are stone blocks, cut, carved, and positioned, some weighing over 800 tons. That's more than 3 fully loaded Boeing 747s per stone. One of them, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs over 1,000 tons. And yet it was somehow quarried, shaped, and prepared for use over 2,000 years ago. Think about that for a moment. In an era without modern cranes, without trucks, without laser-guided equipment, how were these megaliths moved? Who were the people that did this? And what were they trying to build? Some historians say the Romans built Baalbek. They certainly left their mark, columns, temples, inscriptions. But even Roman records are silent on how the foundation stones, those impossibly massive blocks, were put in place. Local folklore offers a different explanation. In the ancient past, they say, giants roamed this land, beings of immense strength, who could lift mountains and shape the earth with their hands. In Phoenician mythology, Baalbek was said to be the city of the sun god Baal. Some believe it was a sacred site, long before the Romans ever arrived. Others go even further. They suggest Baalbek was never intended as a temple, but as a landing platform for beings from the stars. It sounds unbelievable until you stand next to the stones, until you try to imagine how any ancient civilization, no matter how clever, could have moved such mass with such precision. Mainstream archaeologists have their own theories. They believe the stones were moved using levers, rollers, ropes, and manpower, possibly thousands of workers over several months. But there's a problem. No records of such efforts exist. No ancient writings describe the techniques. And when engineers today are asked to replicate the task with modern knowledge, they often shake their heads. One engineer said it would take a specialized team, cutting-edge equipment, and months of preparation just to move one of those stones a few feet. So how then did a civilization 2,000 years ago do it without leaving a trace? The deeper you go into Baalbek, the more questions arise. Some researchers claim the temple foundations are built atop even older ruins, perhaps from a civilization lost to time. The blocks don't match Roman design. The size, the shaping, the method of alignment. It's unlike anything else in the Roman Empire. It's almost as if the Romans arrived and built their temple on top of something that was already there. Something far older, far more advanced. Maybe Baalbek is just a forgotten marvel of human engineering. Maybe we're underestimating what ancient hands could achieve with enough time, enough tools, and enough willpower. Or maybe we're missing something. Maybe the story of Baalbek is like the stones themselves, too heavy to move without first understanding the force behind them. In the end, Baalbek remains silent. The stones do not speak. They do not tell us who placed them there or why. They only remind us of a time when the impossible was somehow done. And maybe that's the real mystery. Not just how they were built, but why we still can't forget them. What do you think? Who built Baalbek? And how? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that ask the questions history left behind. Until next time, stay curious. There are places in this world where history doesn't just fade, it sinks. Beneath the surface of quiet oceans and behind the curtain of time, entire civilizations may lie waiting, not lost, but hidden. And every so often, when the earth shifts or the tides retreat, the sea offers us a glimpse, a whisper of something ancient, something forgotten, something real. This is the story of the lost temples of Mahabalipuram. Along the southeastern coast of India, where the winds carry the scent of salt and centuries, stands a temple like no other. The shore temple, carved from stone, shaped by time, and softened by the sea air, gazes endlessly toward the horizon. It stands alone, weathered and proud, the last visible piece of a legend so old that even its truth has been worn down by the waves. According to local lore, this solitary temple was once just one among seven magnificent pagodas, their spires stretching toward the heavens, gleaming in the sun, built not just with stone, but with devotion and ambition. So breathtaking was their beauty, the story says, that even the gods grew envious, and in their wrath, they summoned a great flood to reclaim what man had dared to build. In one sweeping motion, 6 of the temples vanished beneath the sea, leaving only the shore temple behind, a lone survivor. And a silent witness. For centuries, this story was whispered by fishermen, passed down through generations, clinging to the edges of myth and memory. To some, it was nothing more than folklore, a poetic tale to explain an ancient structure perched curiously close to the sea. To others, it was a sign that something deeper, something hidden, still waited beneath the waves. But the ocean keeps its secrets well, and for a long time, there was no proof, just stories and stone and silence. Then, in December of 2004, disaster struck. A powerful undersea earthquake sent a massive tsunami crashing across the Indian Ocean, devastating coastlines and reshaping the land. But in the tragedy's aftermath, something remarkable happened. As the waters receded from the shores of Mahabalipuram, the sea gave up a fragment of its mystery. Beneath the wet sands and shallow surf, ancient stone structures began to reveal themselves. Not scattered rocks, not coincidence, but carved pillars, foundations, and blocks that bore the unmistakable signature of human hands. People who had lived and built and worshipped here long before the sea had claimed their world. It was as though the earth had briefly exhaled, and for a moment, history rose to the surface. Marine archaeologists and divers moved quickly to investigate, and what they found was astonishing. Beneath the waves lay more than scattered ruins. They discovered evidence of planned construction, symmetrical arrangements, intricately carved stones, and structural remnants that pointed to a sprawling complex. Some of the formations were located hundreds of meters offshore, partially buried beneath centuries of sand and marine growth. The ocean had not destroyed these temples. It had preserved them, and in doing so, it had transformed legend into something tangible, something real. How did these temples vanish beneath the waves? One explanation suggests a slow and steady process, centuries of rising seas and coastal erosion, gradually pulling the land back into the water. Mahabalipuram, after all, lies along a coastline where storms, floods, and shifting sands are constant forces. Some researchers believe the temples were not lost in a single night, but surrendered to the sea piece by piece, until only one remained. But there are other stories, older, deeper. Ancient Tamil legends speak of Kumari Kandam, a mythical lost continent that once stretched across the Indian Ocean, a land said to be home to an advanced civilization swallowed by the sea in a catastrophic flood. To some, the ruins off Mahabalipuram's coast are not just a temple complex. They are the final fragments of a vanished world, not unlike Atlantis. Still others suggest the temples were simply abandoned, left to time and tide, as dynasties shifted and rulers turned their eyes elsewhere. Forgotten by people, claimed by nature. Perhaps the most haunting possibility is this, that many of the temples still survive beneath the sea, fully intact, waiting in silence. The tsunami of 2004 offered only a glimpse. Since then, the tides have reclaimed what they revealed. But technology is catching up. With sonar, underwater drones, and remote-operated vehicles, the tools to uncover these secrets grow more powerful by the year. Marine archaeologists believe that further exploration may yet reveal more. Hidden temples, submerged sculptures, even ancient inscriptions, waiting to tell us who built these monuments and why they were left behind. For now, the shore temple remains alone, standing quietly where land meets sea, guarding the memories of its lost companions. Its presence is a question carved in stone, a message across time. It reminds us that much of our history does not lie in books or museums, but beneath the surface, where light fades and silence reigns, because the sea, vast and ancient, does not forget. it remembers. And somewhere beneath the waves, the temples of Mahabalipuram still wait, not lost, but listening, hidden beneath the soft, undulating hills of China's Zhejiang province, beneath still pools of water that had sat untouched for centuries, lies a discovery so vast, so precise, and so unexplainably absent from history that it has left archaeologists and scientists grasping at shadows, unable to piece together how such a thing could exist without so much as a single trace of its makers. No records, no tools, no stories passed down, only the silent void of forgotten time, echoing through hollowed stone. These are the Longyu Caves, not natural formations shaped by wind or water, not tombs or shelters built to serve an obvious need, but massive, meticulously carved chambers that seem to defy every convention of ancient construction, each one bearing the marks of deliberate design, each wall lined with symmetrical grooves etched so uniformly that they appear almost machined rather than chiseled by hand, forming a pattern repeated with such consistency that it seems less the work of laborers and more like the result of a lost technology, one that knew how to command stone itself. And yet, despite their complexity and the effort such an undertaking must have demanded, no writings exist to describe their purpose, no legend survives to tell us why they were made, and no document, not even a rumor, in China's long and richly detailed historical records, so much as whispers their name. A silence that is, perhaps, even more haunting than the stone chambers themselves. Their discovery, like many of history's greatest mysteries, happened not through academic pursuit or official excavation, but through the curiosity of a local farmer, a man who, puzzled by the unusually deep and strangely persistent pools that dotted his village, decided one day in 1992 to drain one of them, expecting little more than silt or stone beneath the surface, perhaps the remnants of an old collapsed well. And yet what he uncovered was far beyond anything he could have imagined. As the water receded, the entrance to a hidden chamber began to reveal itself, a vast space descending into the earth with smooth walls, towering ceilings, and a geometry that felt not accidental, but intentional, as though it had been planned and executed with purpose far beyond practicality. Word spread quickly, and soon others began draining more pools, each uncovering yet another hidden cavern. And by the time the discovery had run its course, 24 such chambers had been revealed, forming a subterranean complex of breathtaking scale, spanning over 30,000 square meters, with ceilings that rose to nearly 100 feet and pillars placed at even intervals with architectural precision. A feat that, if undertaken with the tools available in ancient China, would have required thousands of workers working without pause for years, perhaps even decades. And yet, for all that effort, for the sheer volume of stone that must have been carved and carried away, estimated to be close to 1 million cubic meters, there is no debris, no piles of leftover rubble, no discarded tools, no skeletons of workers who toiled and died in the dark. Nothing remains to explain how it was done, who did it, or where all that displaced stone was taken. Even the stone itself bears no sign of unfinished work, no partial carvings, no test markings, no misaligned sections that might suggest error or revision. Only the same chiseled pattern, repeated over and over, along every wall, every ceiling, every pillar, suggesting a process so perfected that not a single stroke was wasted, and so consistent that it calls into question whether we're looking at something made by hands at all, or perhaps by some ancient mechanism we no longer understand. Some have speculated that the caves might have been used for grain storage, or perhaps as military bunkers meant to hide soldiers or supplies, while others suggest that they were temples or ceremonial halls dedicated to a forgotten faith, or even palaces buried beneath the earth for rulers whose names were lost to time. But without inscriptions, without artifacts, without even soot on the walls to suggest torches were ever burned there, every theory remains just that, a speculation born from the absence of evidence. And the deeper one looks, the more the silence of the place seems to resist interpretation, as though whatever civilization created it had not only vanished, but had taken every trace of its existence with it, deliberately or otherwise. What makes the mystery even more profound is the sheer durability of these structures. For while other ancient constructions show their age through erosion, collapse, or decay, the Longyou caves remain astonishingly intact, their walls smooth and solid, their ceilings unwavering, their pillars still standing strong after what could be over 2,000 years, possibly dating back to the Qin dynasty or even earlier. And yet, despite this immense passage of time, there is no indication of structural failure, no flooding, no natural wear that would suggest vulnerability, as if they were not built merely to last, but built to endure against every force the earth itself could throw at them. This has led some to wonder whether these caves were intended not just as functional spaces, but as sanctuaries, places of refuge from something, be it natural disaster, invasion, or some unknown cosmic threat. And their resemblance to modern-day bunkers only deepens that line of thought, raising a question far more unsettling than the usual academic puzzles. If these were shelters, then what, exactly, were they trying to survive? And then there are the markings, the most visually striking and technically perplexing feature of the caves. The parallel chisel marks that cover every surface, running in perfect symmetry from floor to ceiling, forming lines that seem almost too uniform to have been made by hand, too precise to be accidental, and too consistent across all 24 caves to be anything less than intentional. Yet no one can explain how they were made, nor why. And while most archaeologists insist they are simply the result of painstaking manual labor, there are others who see something else, something far more advanced, even perhaps mechanical. Among the more unconventional theories is the suggestion that these caves were not carved with tools at all, but rather shaped using a form of lost technology, one that utilized sound or vibration, or an energy we no longer understand, to soften or dissolve stone, allowing it to be removed with ease and precision beyond anything we've documented in the ancient world. A theory that, while speculative, is not entirely without merit, as modern science has shown that sound can, under certain conditions, alter the structure of solid matter. And in a world where we still don't fully understand the capabilities of ancient civilizations, such possibilities remain strangely compelling. What's even more intriguing is that the mystery of Longyou is not entirely unique, because across the globe, from the megalithic blocks of Pumapunku in Bolivia to the vast underground cities of Derinkuyu in Turkey and the water-bound ruins of Nan Madol in Micronesia, we find similar anomalies, architectural marvels that seem to defy the known capabilities of the societies that supposedly built them. And yet, despite being separated by oceans and millennia, these sites share one thing in common: the absence of clear explanation. The same unanswered question echoed in stone, time and time again. Who built this, and how? To this day, no one knows how many more chambers might lie beneath the hills of Longyou, hidden behind unexcavated walls or buried deeper underground. And though some archaeologists have proposed the use of ground-penetrating radar to survey the surrounding area, progress has been slow, cautious, and shrouded in the same kind of uncertainty that has followed the caves since their first accidental discovery over 3 decades ago. Perhaps buried somewhere beyond our current reach lies a sealed corridor, or a mural etched with forgotten script, or even a single artifact that could bridge the gap between theory and truth, something that could finally name the builders and tell us at last what purpose these immense caverns once served. Or perhaps, as some believe, the truth has already been lost, swallowed by time, preserved only in the hollow silence of stone. And so, the Long U caves remain what they have always been, not just an archaeological site, but a haunting reminder of how much we do not know, how easily entire civilizations can vanish without a trace, how history, even when carved into the very bones of the earth, can still slip through our fingers like dust in a forgotten tomb. They are not merely empty chambers beneath the hills of China. They are echoes, shadows, questions carved with a certainty we no longer possess. And as we walk their halls and study their patterns, as we peer into their depths and wonder who once stood where we now stand, we are left with the quiet, unshakable sense that the story of humanity may be far older, far stranger, and far less complete than we were ever taught to believe. What if I told you that a map, drawn over 500 years ago, might reveal secrets that predate every known civilization? A map that shows Antarctica, centuries before it was discovered. Not just a vague outline, but detailed coastlines rendered as if they had been seen by ancient eyes. This is the enigma of the Piri Reis map, and its story may change the way you look at history forever. In 1929, deep within the archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a dusty bundle of forgotten papers was unearthed. Among them was a strange piece of gazelle skin parchment, inked with curious drawings and vivid colors. It caught the eye of German theologian Gustav Deissmann, and what he held in his hands would soon spark one of the most enduring historical debates of the 20th century. The map was signed by Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral, navigator, and cartographer. He had drawn it in 1513, during the golden age of exploration. At first glance, it appeared to be a fairly typical 16th century world map, showing the western coasts of Europe and Africa, and the eastern edges of the newly discovered Americas. But then came the shock. Along the bottom of the map was a mysterious landmass, one that resembled the outline of Antarctica. Yet there was a problem. Antarctica wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years. Stranger still, the land wasn't shown as the frozen wasteland we know today. It was drawn with precision, detailed coastlines, mountain ranges, and rivers, as if someone had mapped it before it was buried under ice. How could this be? How could a 16th century admiral know what Antarctica looked like when modern geologists didn't confirm its shape until the 20th century? According to handwritten notes in the map's margins, Piri Reis compiled his map using older sources. He claimed to have used over 20 ancient charts and 8 contemporary ones, some reportedly dating back to the era of Alexander the Great. These weren't Ottoman maps. He specifically mentioned Arab, Hindu, and even older references, documents that may have survived through oral tradition, scrolls, or forgotten libraries. Some believe this means that knowledge of Antarctica, when it was still ice-free, may have existed thousands of years ago, long before recorded history. Could there have been an ancient seafaring civilization with the technology to map the world? The theory isn't new. Other Renaissance-era maps, like the Oran-Sifine map and the Zeno map, also depict southern continents eerily similar to Antarctica, complete with non-glacial coastlines. Some researchers speculate that the knowledge preserved in these maps may be the fragmented remnants of a lost global tradition of navigation, passed down from a civilization that predated Sumer, Egypt, or even Atlantis. The idea of a lost civilization isn't just a fantasy for some theorists. It's a growing field of curiosity. They argue that humanity might not be the first technologically capable culture on Earth. Geological evidence supports the possibility that parts of Antarctica were indeed ice-free more than 6,000 years ago. That's long before the rise of ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. If ancient people had the means to navigate global seas and human coastlines, where did they go? Were their cities swallowed by time, by the sea, or by the shifting ice? Some even connect these theories with ancient myths, like the tales of Atlantis, Mu, or Lemuria, not as mere stories, but as echoes of real civilizations lost in prehistory. Of course, not everyone is convinced. Most mainstream historians and cartographers believe that the landmass on the Piri Reis map is a misinterpretation. They argue it's likely just an awkward rendering of South America's southern coast, distorted by limited knowledge and secondhand sailor reports. In the 1500s, maps were often stitched together from fragmented logs, legends, and speculative accounts. Errors were common, and coastlines were frequently stretched, rotated, or misplaced to fill the gaps. This could explain the resemblance to Antarctica. Perhaps the Piri Reis map is not evidence of ancient wisdom, but a fascinating example of human error. And yet, some mysteries refuse to be explained so easily. Could it be that early explorers, perhaps Phoenicians, Chinese, or even unknown pre-Columbian sailors, reached further than history gives them credit for? Could ancient maps have been created, then lost to time, only to resurface through Renaissance hands, like Piri Reis? The truth may lie somewhere between science and speculation, a puzzle with pieces missing, where every theory, no matter how plausible, leaves something unanswered. After nearly a century of study, the Piri Reis map still raises more questions than answers. Is it the last surviving fragment of a lost age of exploration? Or just a beautifully flawed artifact from a time when the edges of the world were still unknown? Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: the Piri Reis map remains one of history's most haunting enigmas. A whisper from the past, daring us to look deeper and wonder what else might be hidden beneath the ice. What do you think? Ancient knowledge or misunderstood coincidence? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoy unraveling mysteries like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious. There are mysteries buried beneath the soil of ancient America that no amount of digging has ever fully uncovered. And among these enigmas, there lies a puzzle not centered on a single artifact, nor a cryptic book, but on the silent disappearance of an entire civilization, a culture that once thrived for generations, only to vanish almost as swiftly as it appeared, leaving behind fragments of its existence. And with a haunting question: what happened to the Clovis people? The Clovis culture stands as one of the most perplexing and haunting chapters in the deep prehistory of North America. It stretches back nearly 13,000 years, placing it among the earliest known human civilizations to leave their mark upon this vast continent. The people of Clovis were no mere wanderers. They were expert hunters, innovators of their age, recognized by their distinctive and highly sophisticated tools, especially the Clovis points, sleek, fluted spearheads, crafted from flint and stone with such precision that they seem to speak of a shared system of knowledge, perhaps even networks of trade and communication that reached far beyond what we once imagined. For much of the 20th century, archaeologists believed that the Clovis people were the first humans to arrive in the Americas, crossing the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia during the last ice age. For a time, this theory held. The tools they left behind, the bones of mammoths they once brought down, and the scattered remnants of their camps suggested a culture well adapted to the brutal realities of a colder, wilder world. And then, they vanished. Without warning, the presence of the Clovis people disappears from the archaeological record. There are no signs of war, no obvious traces of famine, no burial grounds teeming with evidence of mass death. It is as if this once vibrant civilization was suddenly erased, leaving only a trail of stone and bone in its wake. The silence of their departure has puzzled generations of researchers and has given rise to a host of theories, some grounded in science, others brushing the edges of the extraordinary. The story of their rediscovery began in the early 1900s when those remarkable spear points were unearthed in Clovis, New Mexico, giving the ancient culture its name. Found alongside the fossilized remains of Ice Age giants, like mammoths and bison, these artifacts painted a portrait of a people who had mastered big game hunting in a harsh and unforgiving environment. As similar discoveries emerged across the United States, into Canada, and even as far south as parts of South America, the picture grew ever clearer. The Clovis culture was not a small, isolated tribe, but a far-reaching, successful society that once spanned entire continents. And yet, around 12,800 years ago, their trail ends abruptly. Clovis artifacts simply vanish. No slow decline, no gradual transformation in their tools or settlement patterns, just absence. This sudden silence sparked one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of our time. What could cause an entire civilization, widespread, resourceful, and adapted to the Ice Age world, to disappear in what seems like an instant? One of the most compelling and chilling theories is known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. According to this idea, a comet or asteroid struck North America around the same time the Clovis vanished, unleashing a wave of destruction across the continent. The impact is believed to have triggered uncontrollable wildfires, blanketing the skies in ash and debris, plunging the Earth into a rapid and devastating return to Icy Age conditions. The resulting climate shock, known as the Younger Dryas cooling event, would have decimated ecosystems and starved the Clovis of their primary food sources. Intriguingly, evidence for such an event does exist. At numerous Clovis archaeological sites, researchers have found a strange layer of dark sediment known as the black mat. This thin carbon-rich layer contains microscopic diamonds, known as nanodiamonds, that may be the signature of an extraterrestrial impact. If true, the Clovis may have been among the earliest human cultures to fall victim to a planetary catastrophe. But not all researchers agree that the Clovis were simply wiped out. Another theory suggests that they didn't disappear, but evolved. As the great Ice Age beasts, mammoths, mastodons, and saber-toothed cats, began to vanish, so too did the Clovis way of life. Some archaeologists propose that the Clovis people adapted to the changing world, shifting their survival strategies, turning to smaller game, and blending into new emerging cultures, such as the Folsom people, who appear in the archaeological record soon after. If this is the case, then the Clovis did not fade from history. They became history. Their identity transformed, their tools reshaped, their traditions passed on beneath different names. They may not have vanished, only changed. Yet there is a darker theory, one more unsettling in its implications. Some believe that the disappearance of the Clovis may have been the result of a catastrophe far greater than we understand. One that not only drove animals, like the giant ground sloth and dire wolf, to extinction, but may have also swept away entire human populations. Disease, perhaps, or an environmental cascade. or something else entirely, lost to the passage of time. And then, as with many great mysteries, there are anomalies, strange pieces that don't quite fit the puzzle. In recent decades, discoveries at archaeological sites such as Monte Verde in Chile and the Galt site in Texas have revealed artifacts that predate Clovis tools by thousands of years. This challenges the long-standing belief that the Clovis were the first Americans. If earlier cultures existed, then who were the Clovis truly? Were they a dominant migration wave, or merely one branch of a deeper, older lineage? Perhaps the remnants of an even more ancient civilization, lost to the ravages of an Ice Age world? No one can say for certain. The fate of the Clovis people remains one of archaeology's most haunting questions. Were they erased by a sudden planetary catastrophe? Did they evolve into later cultures and simply vanish from the archaeological spotlight? Or were they part of an older, forgotten chapter in the story of humanity, one that has yet to be written? All that remains now are the tools, the bones, and the silence of the earth itself. The Clovis people are gone, their voices lost to time, their fate still hidden beneath the soil of a land they once called home. Perhaps one day we will find the answer. But until then, the mystery endures, whispered by the wind across ancient plains and etched into the stone blades they left behind. If you enjoyed this journey into one of the great mysteries of human history, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss another story. Every week, we explore the lost, the forgotten, and the unexplained, from ancient ruins to cosmic enigmas. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep wondering what still lies buried just beneath the surface. Beneath the cold, churning waters of the North Sea lies a secret that time and tide have all but buried. A secret not carved into stone or passed down through ancient scrolls, but whispered by the sea itself, in bones dragged up by fishermen, in tools found beneath the waves, in strange, forgotten landscapes mapped by machines probing the ocean floor. This is the story of Doggerland, a lost world, once teeming with life, now erased by nature, remembered only in fragments and faint echoes. A land that once connected Britain to the European mainland, home to thousands of people, rich in rivers, forests, and wild game. A place where early humans lived, hunted, built shelter, and then vanished. But Doggerland was not a myth. It was real, and its disappearance may be one of the greatest untold stories of prehistory. Tens of thousands of years ago, the world looked very different from the one we know today. During the last ice age, much of Earth's water was locked inside massive glaciers, lowering sea levels and exposing vast stretches of land that are now hidden beneath the oceans. One of those lost lands was Doggerland, a vast plain that once stretched between what we now call the United Kingdom and the coasts of the Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany. Far from being a desolate expanse, Doggerland was vibrant, rolling hills, fertile river valleys, dense woodlands. It was a landscape alive with animals and early humans who followed the rhythms of the seasons. Hunter-gatherers roamed its fields and fished its streams. They left behind tools, hearths, and footprints, signs of a world that once was. Doggerland didn't appear in textbooks or ancient myths. In fact, for centuries, its very existence remained unknown. The first clues came not from archaeologists, but from fishermen, men trawling the depths of the North Sea, who began to haul up more than just fish. Ancient bones, stone tools, pieces of antler carved by human hands, even fragments of skulls, all pulled from the ocean floor, dredged up from a place where no human should have walked, unless at some point that seabed had once been dry land. It wasn't until the 20th century that science began to catch up with the mystery. As technology advanced, so did our ability to see beneath the waves. Sonar mapping and underwater archaeology revealed something astonishing: a submerged landscape frozen in time. Riverbeds, hill formations, even the faint traces of what might have once been human settlements began to appear in scours of the North Sea floor. What had seemed like a featureless ocean bottom turned out to be a ghostly imprint of a forgotten world. But what happened? How could an entire land, a place the size of modern-day countries, simply vanish? The answer, as always, begins with change. As the Ice Age came to a slow end, global temperatures rose, glaciers melted, sea levels rose. Slowly, year after year, century after century, the oceans crept forward, swallowing lowlands and pushing the people of Doggerland inland. Bit by bit, the land grew smaller. The rivers grew wider. The forests grew wetter. Doggerland was dying, not in an instant, but in a slow, relentless retreat. But then, something catastrophic. Around 8,000 years ago, a massive underwater landslide occurred off the coast of Norway. Known today as the Storegga Slide, it was one of the largest submarine landslides ever recorded, a violent collapse of the ocean floor that triggered a colossal tsunami. Walls of water, some rising over 30 feet high, surged across the North Sea. In their path lay Doggerland, already weakened by centuries of rising seas, now faced with devastation beyond imagination. Forests were torn apart. Villages were swept away. In a matter of hours, what remained of the land was drowned forever. For those living there, the event must have been nothing short of apocalyptic. Some may have escaped, fleeing to higher ground in Britain or continental Europe. Others were not so lucky. Their homes, their lives, their history, all erased beneath the waves. And yet, not completely lost. Though the North Sea is a difficult and unforgiving place for archaeology, with murky waters, ever-shifting sediments, and brutal storms, the secrets of Doggerland have not been fully silenced. In recent decades, more and more evidence has emerged. Fishermen still bring up tools, bones, and even wooden fragments. In one case, ancient human footprints were found preserved in the mud, offering a glimpse into the final days of those who lived on the shrinking edge of a dying land. In 2018, researchers using advanced sonar detected what could be the outlines of ancient structures buried beneath layers of sediment, hints that entire villages, or perhaps even burial sites, may still lie intact beneath the seabed, waiting, preserved in silence. But will we ever truly explore Doggerland? That is the great challenge. Unlike other lost civilizations, cities buried in desert sands or swallowed by jungles, Doggerland lies beneath a shallow but dangerous sea. Even today, exploration is limited. The technology exists, but the risks are high and the answers are elusive. Still, the legend grows. Some researchers have even wondered whether Doggerland could be the ancient inspiration for myths like Atlantis, a once great land swallowed by the sea, remembered in fragments, passed down through generations as stories of a lost homeland. Perhaps the memory of Doggerland lingered in the minds of those who escaped, retold around fires, handed down as warning or wonder. Over time, the memory may have blurred, transformed, but the essence remained, a place that once was and is no longer. For now, Doggerland remains just beyond our reach, a land we know existed but cannot walk, a chapter of human history buried beneath cold waters, where nature writes in silence and time holds its secrets close. But its story reminds us of something profound, that beneath our oceans lie entire worlds we have yet to rediscover. civilizations erased not by war or conquest, but by wind, water, and time itself. And as we continue to explore our planet and others, we must wonder how many more Doggerlands lie hidden. How much of our history remains unseen? The waves remember, even when we forget. And sometimes, if we listen closely, they whisper what was lost. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with us tonight. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing and joining us again as we uncover more lost chapters of history, hidden places, and mysteries waiting just beneath the surface. Until next time, sleep well and dream of forgotten worlds. Throughout history, Egypt has been a land of ancient wonders and long-buried secrets. From the golden tombs of pharaohs to temples lost beneath the sands, each discovery tells a story of a civilization that once ruled the ancient world. But in 2018, in the heart of a bustling modern city, a new mystery emerged, one that defied expectations, invited speculation, and left more questions than answers. This is the story of the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria. Deep in the heart of Alexandria, a centuries-old mystery lay hidden, a sealed black sarcophagus untouched for over 2,000 years. When it was finally opened in 2018, what lay inside defied all expectations. Let's explore the story of the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria. Beneath the busy streets of Alexandria, Egypt, a 2018 discovery drew worldwide attention. Construction workers accidentally unearthed a massive pitch-black sarcophagus. Unlike the ornate tombs of pharaohs, this one was completely black, unmarked, and seemingly untouched. It was the largest sealed sarcophagus ever discovered in Alexandria, and no one knew what lay inside. Some speculated it might hold the remains of Alexander the Great. Others believed it could belong to an unknown noble or military figure. But when the archaeologists finally opened it, the truth was far stranger than anyone had imagined. Alexandria has always been a city wrapped in mystery. Founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, much of its ancient past lies buried under the modern city and the waters of the Mediterranean. But occasionally, something long forgotten comes to light. The sarcophagus was uncovered during regular excavation work in the Sidi Gabr district, an area already known for its archaeological importance. When construction workers struck something solid underground, it was clear they had found something unusual. The sarcophagus was enormous, 9 feet long, more than 5 feet wide, and over 6 feet tall. It was carved entirely from black granite and sealed with an exceptionally thick layer of mortar, preserving it undisturbed for millennia. Due to its size and the care taken to seal it, archaeologists believed it must have held someone of considerable significance. Some even dared to hope it might be the long-lost tomb of Alexander the Great, whose burial place remains a mystery. Since Alexander founded the city that bears his name, many have speculated that he was buried somewhere beneath it. But there was another theory, one that gave some people pause. The idea of cursed tombs has been around for centuries. Stories of bad luck or death following the opening of ancient graves are well known. From the supposed curse of King Tutankhamun to other eerie coincidences linked to tomb discoveries, speculation swirled. Some locals even warned that opening the sarcophagus could release something dangerous and ancient. Despite the warnings, archaeologists moved forward. The chance of a major historical discovery was too significant to ignore. Opening the sarcophagus wasn't a simple task. The lid alone was estimated to weigh over 15 tons and required heavy machinery to lift. When it was finally opened, a foul odor immediately filled the air. Inside, there were no treasures or well-preserved mummies, only something far more unsettling. The sarcophagus was filled with a reddish-brown liquid, and within it floated the skeletal remains of 3 individuals. This liquid was a mixture of groundwater and decomposed human tissue, which had seeped in over centuries and turned into a putrid, decaying sludge. The skeletons belonged to 2 men and 1 woman, but beyond that, little could be determined at first. What puzzled researchers was the complete lack of any markings, inscriptions, or burial items, which was highly unusual for a tomb of such scale. Typically, Egyptian burials included artifacts meant to accompany the dead into the afterlife. This one had none. That absence only made the mystery deeper. Who were these people? Why were they buried in such a massive, featureless sarcophagus? And why had it been so tightly sealed? Once the discovery became public, speculation took off. Some believed the strange liquid had supernatural properties, and there were even bizarre online petitions from people claiming they wanted to drink it to gain mystical powers. Others suggested the burial might have been part of a forgotten ritual, perhaps even a failed attempt at mummification or a form of punishment. More logical theories proposed that the individuals were likely high-ranking military officials or nobles. The size of the sarcophagus implied high status, yet the absence of burial artifacts suggested something highly unusual about their interment. One possibility is that they died suddenly, perhaps due to disease or in battle, and were buried quickly and without ceremony. Another theory is that the sarcophagus had originally been created for someone else, but was later reused as a group grave. Despite all the theories, no definitive answers emerged. The skeletons were taken for further analysis, and the sarcophagus was preserved for study. Though it didn't contain Alexander the Great, the Black Sarcophagus remains one of the most mysterious tombs discovered in recent memory. Its size, its strange contents, and the unanswered questions surrounding it make it a discovery unlike any other. Even in a land as rich with history as Egypt, some discoveries still manage to leave us speechless. The Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria may never give up all its secrets, but it serves as a reminder that the past is never truly buried. Beneath our feet, the sands of time continue to guard stories waiting to be told. And sometimes those stories begin with a sealed tomb and a question that echoes across the ages. Who were they? And why were they forgotten?